Prime Minister and delivering the remarks that His Excellency the Prime Minister would have delivered, and then kindly taking some time to answer questions and talk to me both about the general topics and specifically about his portfolio. Gosh, this is a long sentence. Is His Excellency Mr. Hisham Zazua, the Minister of Tourism. Thank you, Hisham. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Richard. Thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be around in this conference. And first, to all of you here gathered in this room today, a sincere apology by my boss, His Excellency Ibrahim Mahleb, the Prime Minister of Egypt. He was adamant to be here, but unfortunately very urgent, very important, very sudden reasons hampered him coming today, and he asked me to deliver this speech on his behalf. So allow me to first start with the speech, and then we can sit down and discuss things as you wish, Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind welcome, and I'm very pleased to be here today. Let me start by expressing my thanks to Richard Banks and Euromoney for bringing together such a dynamic group to discuss Egypt's economic and investment roadmap. Your efforts over the past several months to bring this conference to fruition has been inspiring. I'd also like to thank the speakers who all provided sharp and thought-provoking insights to the forum and the delegates for their valuable contributions. We are all here today united towards one goal: to put Egypt back on the map as one of the world's prime investment destinations. For millennia, Egypt has made its presence felt across the region and around the world. Making the best out of this strategic geographic location, sitting at the crossroads of Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, as well as of the talent of our people, their warmth and hard work. Egypt has thrived as a hub for tourism, investment, and technology prior to the global financial crisis. FDI inflows to Egypt totaled more than $10 billion a year, and our nation was seen as a natural home to regional and global R&D centers for companies like Microsoft. Yet, in the last 4 years, the challenges we have faced as a nation have been substantial. But I stand here today in the knowledge and the resolute belief that we are back on track. We are nearing completion of the political roadmap and setting a solid foundation to sustain long-term growth while continuing to manage our present challenges. Our government is committed to restoring and have a fiscal sustainability in order to rebuild the future. While this will remain our focus, we will balance our fiscal measures with a concern for equity, social justice, and improving the living conditions of the most vulnerable in our society. This explains why we have sought to tackle inequitable areas such as fuel subsidies, and why a core theme of our work program will be looking at to broaden the tax base, combat evasion, and develop a progressive taxation system. I'm heartened to say that our reforms have started to gain traction. Preliminary estimates indicate that growth in the final quarter of the past finished fiscal year has picked up to 3.5%. Industrial and manufacturing production are up strongly. Foreign direct investments inflows are increasing, and our stock market is booming. There is a real sense of renewed confidence that is emerging from the improved in political stability and the far-reaching reforms that our government has enacted. But we still have much to do. And so this conference has been timely in helping us taking stock of the challenges and opportunities we face. In this context, the theme of this conference has been stability, investment, and growth. While those three words alone cannot sum up the magnitude of the challenges Egypt faces, neither do they do justice to the scale of our ambition and commitment to turning Egypt into productive and also more equitable economy, stability cannot come at the expense of growth, and investment must be focused on maximizing the potential of the whole economy for the ultimate benefit of all Egyptian citizens. Over the last 2 days, you have been privileged to have heard from some of the finest business brains from around the region and the world. I am pleased that during this time we have not been simply hearing the views of these minds, but that we have gone further to debate and discuss tangible solutions to Egypt's current challenges, as well as brainstormed and reflected on the many opportunities that this country offers. In doing so, I am confident we all have the will and the vision to put Egypt back on the global investment map. This conference has been built around 4 panels covering investment, finance, housing, and mega projects, all of which will collectively contribute to a balanced growth strategy. On the investment side, we've heard the need to craft an investment strategy for the long term. Egypt has been the recipient of generous donor aid for a number of years, which has provided us with a vital lifeline through the political instability that we have endured. This has allowed us to set solid physical and macroeconomic strategies, which to launch a successful economic growth program. However, reliance on foreign aid is not sustainable. It is essential that Egypt turns itself into an attractive destination for private sector investment from all four corners of the world. This is a challenge, and we cannot be complacent as competition for FDI is increasingly fierce. Our pathway to development is through economic sustainability, and for this, attracting foreign investment is essential. We must therefore work tirelessly to remove barriers to investments and to promote our strengths. By way of example, Egypt has suffered from a legacy of bureaucratic over-regulation, which this government is determined to tackle. Addressing this will go to a long way to turning the country not just into an investment destination, but into the favored destination for those seeking long-term gains in the Middle East and North Africa. As we encourage foreign investors to stay for the long haul, we must not ignore the untapped talent and capital which will already exist in Egypt. If we cannot encourage our own people to invest domestically, how can we hope to attract investment from around the world? Any strategy to encourage domestic growth and investment must also encompass Egypt's large informal sector. For years now, many of our most entrepreneurial talent have felt inhibited by bureaucratic inertia and confusing taxation regimes. It is essential that we bring this talent in to allow it to fully engage with the domestic and international economy. In the 4 workshops yesterday, ably chaired by Victoria Ben, Richard Banks, and Brian Mooney, you've looked at the key sector challenges facing the Egyptian economy. In tourism, our task is to bring people back in real numbers to the wonders of not just the ancient world, but the modern. We have heard how the government must foster the right security environment for this and invest in upgrading the infrastructure of our great sites and museums, while ultimately ensuring the private sector takes the lead, especially in the provision of new hotels and resort facilities, particularly in promising areas like our Mediterranean coast. The other 3 topics you've discussed all focus on the huge challenge that Egypt's expanding population poses for the decades to come. If you are to lay the foundations for sustained economic growth, we must ensure that we have the energy and transportation infrastructure in place, as well as the agricultural capacity to feed our population. Egypt faces significant challenges in the energy sector. As our economy develops and the living standards of our 90 million strong population increases, we must take meaningful steps to ensure the security and continuity of our energy supplies. This will require not just investment in traditional sources like oil and LNG, but also creating greater diversity by harnessing the power of solar energy and other renewable sources to provide clean and exhaustible energy. We've heard about the need to set a transportation infrastructure plan, which is both phased and realistic. This needs to prioritize the linking of regional hubs, ensuring that growth benefits the whole of Egypt, not just the capital, and the special economic development zones. Of course, there will always be breakout zones which set the pace for the others, but we cannot ignore the needs and the untapped talent of the regions. On agriculture, and per the discussions, and given that our focus must be on social equity, we must ensure that no Egyptian should ever go hungry. With the population growing at 1.5% a year, this may be no small task. It will require the combined ingenuity of the best brains in the private and public sectors working together. But if we are to develop as an economy, we must also enable production for export. As we have seen, finding the right balance and mechanism for achieving this is not a small task. And during today's session, you have addressed the other three pillars of our growth strategy: finance, housing, and the expansion of the Suez Canal. Amr Abu Al-Aish of Tanmiya, Sharif Al-Bahira of Barclays, and Layla Muqaddam of the African Development Bank reinforced the case that a healthy financial sector underpins long-term growth. We must ensure a balance between guaranteeing that an efficient financial sector allocates capital to strategic projects, but also that large-scale investments do not crowd out lending to medium and small firms. SMEs are essential for the creation of a more inclusive economy, particularly given that they tend to be engines for generating jobs. During this debate, I was particularly struck by the role of new technologies in creating both the efficiencies and the analytical tools essential to assess risk and return. This would appear to apply not just to large organizations, but to smaller institutions and enterprises. This offers an enormous opportunity to make the substantial resources of the formal financial sector available to the man in the street, but without the need for guarantees from the government. We've seen in other nations since 2008 how a combination of unregulated financial practices in the real estate sector led to a financial disaster. So it is fitting that our panel on finance was followed by the address by my colleague, His Excellency Mustafa Madbouli, our Minister of Housing. As Egypt's population grows, new quality housing alongside energy, food and water will be vital to ensuring that every man, woman and child in this country benefits from economic growth. In your panel discussion, Ian Albert, Omar Bahgat highlighted as the best means to construct houses rapidly while minimizing inefficiencies. It was appropriate that you ended the session with a discussion of the Suez Canal. The expansion of the Suez Canal signals this government's commitment to expand and cement Egypt as a global economic hub of strategic importance. Throughout its existence, the canal has only been able to handle one-way traffic, forcing ships while others pass and forcing transit times up to wasteful 15 hours. The new expansion is projected to cost $4 billion and will involve the construction of a 72-kilometer parallel waterway allowing two-way traffic for the first time. Angus Blair of Signet and Ibrahim El Hammadi of DP World Sokhna have given us guidance on how we can best raise capital in the modern financial market. Klaus Holm Lawrence, Managing Director of the Container Terminal, has explained how the canal can become a model of efficiency and help create highly skilled jobs throughout the region. I myself am delighted to remind you that the opening of the new canal bypass will almost double the daily capacity of the canal, increasing annual revenues from $5 billion to $13.5 billion by the year 2023. The profits will be invested across the country, seeding the growth of the SME enterprises, without which no nation can have a truly inclusive economy. The construction itself will provide employment for 1 million people, but the canal will also be the centerpiece of a new industrial and transportation hub, ensuring that this strategic waterway creates permanent jobs and benefits Egypt's economy for the long term. Yet, as much as this project is an important infrastructure development, it is also a representative of something greater. Alongside other mega projects, the Golden Triangle, or initiatives to reclaim land and from the desert, it is a signal of the scale of our new ambition and aspiration for Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, you have covered a lot. You have covered a lot of ground over the next few months, and in the run-up to the Egypt Economic Summit, you will see even greater progress in this area as we make a number of announcements to reveal new initiatives and developments. We anticipate that you will hear a flow of news about the concrete actions that we will be taking to reform and strengthen this economy's fundamentals that will reshape and replace Egypt's current profile and re-expose the nation's inherent strengths and potential to the world. That there is no nation more resilient than Egypt. That we have suffered from an incredible social upheaval, and yet we have picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves down, and are once again taking hold of our destiny as we rebound, not in incremental steps, but with bold new leaps in that area. There is a new Egypt in motion at this moment. Investors should feel a sense of urgency to invest, to make the most out of the opportunities Egypt before their competitors do. We are putting Egypt back on the global investment map. Egypt's time is now. Thank you.
While we do that, let me reciprocate, if I may. I'm doing it publicly, but I'm also asking you personally to pass on a message to the Prime Minister to say thank you for writing that speech. It was scarily with us, but sincerely, I mean, I would like, on behalf of Euromoney, to say thank you to him and to the other members of the cabinet for making us feel so welcome here. I mean, I know we've been here a long time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're welcome. But it's been a tremendous 2 days. Convey to him that this, I think, without a shadow of a doubt, the conference it reminds me of most is the one that we did in September 2004. In Egypt, there's a sense of positivity, there's a sense of energy, there's a sense that really things have turned, and it's a wonderful thing from our point of view because everyone comes up and says how well we've done as a conference. And in fact, we haven't done anything that we weren't doing in the other years. It's just the sentiment has changed. So I really genuinely would like you to convey our enormous thanks to him. And also, if you happen to bump into the President, if you could say to him, thank you for writing such a wonderful article, an open letter to the delegates of Euromoney, which was a totally unexpected gesture, something that's never happened before, and a real signifier, I think, of difference. So all that sort of stuff done, but we'll send a report to the Prime Minister. I've been scribbling down ideas as you were writing. Poor chap's not going to get a moment's rest. But you were talking of moment's rest, one of the reasons that unfortunately a couple of the ministers couldn't speak this morning was that a cabinet meeting happened this morning. Did anything happen in that cabinet meeting? I'm pleased.
Thank you, Richard, for raising this up. As the government is known for being the 7 o'clock government, so we started our meeting at 7:30 this morning. We had a good session until I came here to you this afternoon. But the main thing that I'd like to share with you and with everybody here and to all our investors, particularly in the energy sector, that today we have approved the detailed offer and program the Minister of Electricity provided for the Cabinet for approval for the in-feed tariff for the renewable energy projects, particularly in the solar and wind area. I think the in-feed tariff will be very interesting. The IRR presented in his presentation this morning was quite interesting in that sense, and I believe it's a very good opportunity for people to rush, I'll put it this way, I really mean that, to rush for the first 2,000 megawatts that will be provided in that area. Egypt needs it, but it's a very good opportunity for investments in that area and that domain. That's the latest news in that respect.
Well, it's very good news. I mean, if I call my solar energy, renewable energy,
yes,
understanding, which is a little patchy, so correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, the setting of that tariff now means that there is a clear methodology on which to base the financing of these projects, so it should enable them to go ahead, is that?
Exactly, and there is a commitment from the government that gives guarantees to the investors in that area, which is important. And secondly, that it buys the production at a very attractive rate in that sense. So this will help investment to flow in that area. And I'm, on behalf of the government, asking everybody to start looking into that area of investment in particular.
Okay, and they should talk to the Minister of Electricity, is that the person
Yes, exactly. He's in charge. He's the man driving that that car.
Okay, excellent. So don't call Minister Zazua. Please call the Minister of Electricity. I'm sure he's waiting for all of your calls as we speak. We'll flash up his cell phone number on the screen in a minute. No, we won't do that. Minister, I'm going to ask you a few questions, as it were, in your capacity as the Prime Minister's delegate, and then we'll come on and talk to a few bits about tourism,
right.
Because this has been an important theme of the conference. But let's start with the official questions, as it were. And I must say that the Minister doesn't know what the questions are.
Yes.
Okay. So if he looks terribly cross, then obviously I've asked the right one. We've had a lot of talk over the last 2 days. Obviously, it's conference. That's mainly what we do. Lots of plans, lots of strategy, and that was the purpose of this conference. Really, was to look at the articulation of the strategy of the government and the strategy of the private sector and the international community. And I think we can say unequivocally we've achieved that. Now, the sort of underlying question and the underlying anxiety of people, Egyptian people, international delegates, all sorts of people, and my own underlying is this word delivery, because we have heard in the past from various members of the public and private sectors in Egypt lots of great things. And those great things have not really come to pass. What is different about this administration, about this government, that we should have confidence that you are going to deliver on all of these plans, or at least some of them anyway?
Well, whoever suspects or has this kind of feeling you mentioned, incling yourself, as you said.
I'll blame myself. I definitely have that feeling.
But I don't blame him for that, because the experience is reflecting that sense. But this government has a sense of urgency, and in the Prime Minister's speech, we have mentioned that we do admit that we have a problem in the system, the bureaucratic system in that sense. But if you, and I ask my fellow Egyptians to remember that in so far in the past short period of this government's age, in that sense, in 2 months, we have passed a number of resolutions that reflects that we are respecting all these hurdles that everybody is complaining of. We cannot turn that gigantic ship of bureaucracy around in 24 hours, but at least the spirit is there and action is being taken. And I think from now till the end of the year, a number of legislative changes, which is the core and the heart of what people will look for, I think will take place. That guarantees the proper foundation for all these apprehension and worries in that sense. And I promise you that not in a year's time we'll sit down back again and say, well, did we deliver or not? The delivery is happening by the day. The idea is to change the culture for the people in the second and third and fourth tier. Because all the ministers, I tell you, all my colleagues are working very hard, and if you see and sit with any one of them, he has this sense of purpose and knows exactly where to go. The problem is changing the culture, and this culture cannot change without legislative changes. We have to admit, both the private sector and the public, is that where there is a sense of a shaky hand in taking decisions. That is one of the reasons in the hurdle of moving ahead. And to do that, we have recognized it as a government, and we're trying to change the legislation that will help both the minister and more so all the people in the government sector, the civil servant, to feel that he's secured while taking the decision in the right direction, that he is covered in that sense.
I mean, I think. Sorry, I interrupted you, Your Excellency. I didn't mean to, because I'd like to talk a little bit more in a second about that legislation, because I think it's a crucial part of things. But you know, I think from Euromoney's point of view, speaking as Euromoney, I mean, I think one of the very positive things that has come out of this event is that there seems to be an acceptance on the part of the government that there is a problem with the government. I mean, with general governance, and you know, to some extent, that is recognizing the problem is the first step in solving the problem. It's like, you know, we do have a problem, which has not been something that has been on the dialogue for many years. So you know, plaudits for that. But let's look at the legislation and say, well, okay, what is the problem at its heart one that civil servants and indeed ministers and politicians have a justified fear of making a decision because they feel that might come back and bite them in the future.
Later on, yes.
And you know, it might, you know, are you going to work to sort of indemnify people from the results of their decisions, as long as their decisions are not, you know, criminal or anything like that? That criminal is criminal.
Yes.
But we can't legislate. We can't make people competent where they're not competent, or we can't see into the future. Is that what's going to do? Is say make a decision?
This, I think, has been an agreement by the business community at large and the government, is what is hampering the movement in that sense. And one of the corner areas and pillars of that strategy is to work, and that's why we have a committee for that running at the moment, to group all the needed legislation. I'm saying one part of it, but we already passed the legislation regarding to respect any agreement that the government has signed in previous times, regardless of the content of that contract, if it had problems here or there. But the idea is to respect, the government should respect what it had signed on behalf of the previous governments. It has to be respected, and that legislation already passed, and that's one step in the right direction. I think we should continue in setting all the needed legislation that will clear that sense of negativity or grayness in the atmosphere in the very shortest time to come.
I mean, I certainly know from working with Egypt through the whole transition period and all of that, and working with the ministers in every administration and all the different ones, that one of their anxieties, of course, was that if they took a decision, somebody was going to come at them
Yes.
legally, you know, whether that was a real lawsuit or a spurious lawsuit or a politically motivated lawsuit. But that's not an environment where the necessary decisions can be made. So, and, you know, I understand, and you know, I don't blame them for it. No, you know, no one would. Well, you were there too, but you know, you know what I mean. I mean, it wasn't really conducive to action. Are you now saying that that's changed and that's gone? And
that's changing, and we're moving into that direction. And I don't know if it was mentioned in this room during your deliberations that Egypt needs in this fiscal year 260 billion Egyptian pounds worth of investment. We are securing as a government 60 billion out of the 260. So you need another 200 billion to come. Where it will come from? It's from you guys, from the private sector. So if you don't feel comfortable in dealing with the right atmosphere and having the right platforms to move ahead in that sense and trying to change this bureaucratic model